Alright, this is another active colony site in Colby that I've been wanting to share with you guys for quite a while. It's a pretty large colony, gets quite a bit every single year, so just kind of wanted to share this with you guys. So the landlord's name is actually, his name is Mark Wingard. He actually lives in Kansas City, and this is actually his mom's house. He actually had a house up in Kansas City which had no luck for quite a while, and then he eventually moved it back here, and the first year he moved it back here he actually got one pair, so it's pretty neat. So now we'll bring the landlord in and I'll ask him a couple questions on things. So I'm gonna step out here and sun a little bit. And here he is. This is Mark Wingard. First of all, I just wanted to ask you basically what got you started in them.
Well, my parents bought this house in 1974, and I had I guess just meeting people on the neighborhood. I walked down the street, there was a lady named Miriam, and she had a birdhouse in her backyard, and my parents knew that I was really into birds, and so that kind of actually sent me down there and hooked me up with her, and I would go back and sit in her backyard. And she had a 12 compartment house, and I just became completely infatuated with it. And that same year, a house just about 3 doors down to the north of us here, there was a house that had been abandoned by a colony. I'm sure it had grown up into the trees and had slightly blown over in the wind. And my dad went down there and asked if we could purchase it from her, and she said, well, you can't purchase it, but you can have it. So we dug it up and brought it down here, and it was still early in the season. I remember Miriam having her martins already, but Dad went ahead and dug the hole and put it in the ground for me, and that very first year in 1974 we got one pair. And so that was the initial, the start was with one trio castle in 74 with one pair.
Alright, well that's a pretty neat story. Well anyways, next probably would be, I see these 2 trio castles you have. You told me exactly where you got them, but can you just tell them?
I bought those off of Craigslist in Kansas City several years ago. I think in 2013 we had a really bad thunderstorm, and I used to have a gourd rack just here where this first trio castle is located by the house that was fairly successful, but the wind blew it over and shattered the gourds all over the driveway. And I was fortunate enough that it did happen kind of in the off season, so I didn't have any colony site abandonment, and there were no martins around. So in replacing that, it also blew one of the 12 compartment houses down and destroyed that. And so my dad was like, well, Mark, what are we going to do? So I just started researching on Craigslist in Kansas City, and I was very fortunate to find these 2 trio castles.
Well, when you are actually back, do you manage them? Do you do nest checks? Do you take care of like mites and?
I do. I try to come back about once a month in the real active times. Sometimes, you know, it doesn't work out, and then I have people like you that I ask to come by and check on my birds. You know, growing up, I didn't have a whole lot of literature about them, and I always kind of grew up with that myth: if you take a bird's nest down or you touch the nest or the young ones, that you can't really do that. And so growing up, I would take the houses down and take out the sparrow nests. But as far as nest checks, I didn't really start that until probably about 5 to 6 years ago was when I really started taking the houses down and counting the eggs and getting into that. I could do a little bit more with it, but being so far away, it's kind of hard to be on top of it since I can't take them down at least once a week. But I do think that it is a very important part of being a landlord. But through the time, you know, I did realize that the martins, whenever I would come around, they would just get so used to you, and they would become so tame. And sometimes whenever I would lower my houses down and take out a sparrow nest, sometimes the females wouldn't even leave the compartments, or I'd be cleaning one out and they would come right down and land on the house. And they just became, they're just such an incredibly tame bird that then I kind of got over my fears of lowering the houses and checking them. I don't know that I've ever, well, I know that I've never done a complete nest change, but I do, I have read about the importance. I know that one year I did have a very bad mite problem, and I did lose a lot of my young ones, and that was before, if I knew then what I know now, I would have been changing out the nests.
I gotcha. So, like, did you start in this location? Like, did you start in the front yard? Or?
I started in the backyard. I started with the one house and eventually got up to 3 12 compartments. And then my father planted, some small trees in the back, and over the last 50 years, of course, those trees have grown up, and so as the trees grew, the martins, became less interested in those houses, and so we just kind of kept moving them to the front. So I can't remember exactly what year that we moved them from the backyard to the side here, but they're doing better, and I have more martins in the front of the yard than I do in the back. We have a lot of walkers that come by. They don't seem to mind the trees, and I've even noticed that the martins, there's the big street light here just above the colony. In the early mornings in the summer when the June bugs are out, the martins will get up real early in the morning and they'll fly right down on the sidewalk, and they'll start picking up those June bugs real early in the mornings. So that was another way that I've learned that I can throw eggshells out in the driveway here and they fly right down. And we've gotten the colony trained that, being this far north and so close to the Colorado line, we do have some extreme temperature changes, and we've had prolonged days of below 40 degrees where you have to come out and feed the martins. And so having them used to coming down on the ground I think has really helped getting them trained to accept food from a spoon, or when mom will throw some scrambled eggs out on the driveway. So I know we've saved several of the birds just through supplemental feeding during cold spells.
Have you ever had any like major cold spells, like a lot of snow or anything like that, like right when the birds arrive?
Last year we had that 12 or 14 inches of snow, and I was in Kansas City at that time, and it was quite a blizzard. And I know that the neighbors just here on the south came and helped me out because the wind had impacted the houses and blown the entrance holes closed, and I know that they lowered one of the houses and opened them up. And during that prolonged cold period, bless my mom's heart, she got out there with the plastic spoon and scrambled eggs and was flipping it up to the birds. And last year I think I had 24, 25 pair. We had over 50 birds. So I know that she spent quite a bit of time out here with her spoon and eggs. I was very proud of her.
Yeah. Well, next, I see that you don't have predator guards on any of your poles. Have you ever had any predators?
I have, not that I'm aware of, and I've never had any abandonment by my colony. I think being in the front yard and having a lot of people around and having the short mown grass, snakes have not been a problem. We've lived here almost 50 years, and never really even seen a whole lot of snakes in the grass. We are the very last street of town, and so behind us there's not a whole lot until you get to Denver. So it's just a very large open field, which I know the martins like, but I really haven't had any problems with snakes. Owls, I haven't had a whole lot of problem with that. And then I do have a pair of red-tailed hawks that nest across the street in those pine trees just over that house on the top. I've never seen them bother the martins, but they will fly real low over the house, and they do get excited, especially when they have their young ones. But as far as I know, I've never had any predators. My biggest issue would be sparrows will become a problem, especially now that my father's passed away, that my mom's not quite as active to come out and pull the nests out. She's like, it's a little messy for her. She loves the birds, but she does have her limits.
I gotcha.
But as far as I know, I've never had a predator actually attack the house other than the parasitic birds. Starlings, I've been very fortunate to not have